everyone, this is Julia with episode number 90 of the Mixology Talk podcast. It is officially 2017 by the time you're listening to this, and that means you've hopefully survived the holiday craziness, and you're looking forward to a brand new year. One way you can vastly improve your quality of life as a bar manager or owner is to find and keep great staff. We talked back in episode 85 about finding good people, but today we're going to focus on keeping them around. We have some ideas for ways that you can make your bar a great place to work without necessarily costing you a bunch of money. By the way, this podcast episode is sponsored by Q Drinks, a craft mixer company based out of New York. We're seeing a lot of great new craft mixers coming on the market recently, and I've been really impressed with the quality, carbonation level, and flavor profile of Q Drinks tonic, grapefruit, and ginger beer mixers, along with the rest of their portfolio. They're made with real, carefully chosen ingredients and designed to let you create a complete balanced cocktail with just their mixers and your spirit of choice. So thanks again to Q Drinks for supporting this podcast. Let's talk staff retention. It seems like it's hard enough to find good staff nowadays, so I think it's important to talk a little bit about how to keep good folks around once you get them to work for you.
Yeah, we've seen a giant explosion in the restaurant scene. I know in the Bay Area, and I'm sure it's much more on a national level as well. But with this increase in restaurants available to the public, there's also a significant decline of people that want to work in them. The trends are in opposite directions. So finding, hiring, keeping good people is just so much more critical these days than it were when I started working in the restaurant business. So we're going to talk to a couple ideas about just finding or keeping really, really good staff around.
Yeah, we definitely talked about the finding good people a couple episodes ago. We'll include that link in the show notes at mixologytalk.com/90. Can you believe we're on episode 90?
That's terrifying.
I know, crazy. But I think it was episode number 85, if I remember correctly. But it's not just important to get people to work for you. It's also important that they keep working for you. And so we put together a list of ideas.
Yeah, and I've heard of and seen a couple places that just feel like people are somewhat disposable in the restaurant area, and it really does cost you a lot of money to go through staff like that. So if you think about how much it costs to hire somebody, the numbers can start to add up real quick. So by turning through staff, it's going to cost your business a lot of money. So even if you have to spend a couple of dollars to keep good staff around, it's absolutely worth the investment, in my opinion.
I could not agree more. So I think we're going to start with the pretty much the basics. And I would just say, be respectful.
Yeah, I think this is, it's silly to say, but
so often it is lacking.
Yeah. And, just be respectful. Treat people like professionals.
And treat people like humans.
Yeah.
I mean, just like even at more of a base level. I mean, talk to people like people. I mean, just because they work for you does not mean that they are slaves, does not mean that you are the king of your castle. I mean, these are folks who have a choice on whether they show up that morning. And if you treat them with respect, if you don't talk down to them, if you watch your tone of voice and treat them as equals, as human beings, it's going to make a huge difference on how folks feel when they walk in the door in the morning.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the way you treat them is going to be how they treat their guests. There's a really famous quote by Danny Myers that I just love to tell people, and that is, hospitality starts at the back of the house. So
that is great.
And it really does make a huge difference. I mean, if you are just in a miserable place and everybody hates each other, nobody's going to want to come in there and have a cocktail. It's going to be the most depressing bar ever.
Yeah, that's not much of a theme bar. Yeah. Depression.
So, just keep the atmosphere upbeat, be positive, treat people well, and that's going to be how they treat their guests. So if you are a bar manager or an owner, this is the first thing that you can do.
And I think on that note, I would say keep an eye out for bad apples. You know, the sort of negative people who never really have anything positive to say, the complainers, the ones who bring everyone down.
Oh, they are an absolute cancer. I mean, they will destroy your business and repel the people that really want to be there to do a good job. And once it catches hold, it'll go through a staff so quickly.
It's so hard to get rid of. I mean, it's literally the saying, bad apples.
Yeah.
They'll spoil a whole bunch, and it's extremely costly, and it's just not worth it. And the last thing you want is, a whole staff full of people who are grumping at your customers.
Right. And it seems to be the most effective, or it'll hit the staff the hardest on the two extreme of the scenarios. When it's really slow and there's not a lot to do, so people start to complain and they have nothing else to do but complain.
I could see that.
Or when you're super busy and you're stressed out. So, I mean, just keep your eye on it.
So those are good times to keep an eye out?
Yeah, and really kind of be a positive influence on the staff and weed out any bad apples before they start to affect the mood of the place too much.
And try to short circuit the negativity. I mean, if you see one or two comments here and there, that's something that you can definitely sort of hop in and try to be that positive voice. But I would definitely say, as we're going to talk about later, that doesn't mean just dismissing folks' concerns, of course, as well. Right.
And a lot of the conversations we're going to have around this subject, and probably a lot of the subjects in the future, are very cultural and how to establish these cultures and stuff. So by establishing a culture that nobody talks badly, if somebody does, it's probably going to become pretty obvious.
Exactly. It's going to stick out as opposed to just being the norm.
Yeah. And on that note, just your expectations. Establish what your level of expectation is on pretty much how you come to work every single day. Everything about your job, have and communicate your level of expectation, and then hold people to that level.
Yeah, I think this one's interesting because, when you say be respectful, it's tempting to think of that as be nice, but it isn't necessarily true, because if you're just being nice to people, then, maybe you're not going to say anything if they're standing
be a pushover.
around.
And there's something that people in the restaurant business are really good at, and that's sizing people up.
Oh yeah, I believe that. And it's so true. If you don't hold folks accountable to what they're supposed to be doing, then it's very simple. People who don't care, who like to skate by, are going to stick around. And people who do care and have pride in their work, they're going to leave.
Right.
And then you end up with the worst of the worst. And that's a bad place to be. It's really, really hard to get out of that circle. So like we said, it's an obvious statement, but there are a lot of different levels as far as being respectful and how that kind of plays out inside of the your business. So on another side of the respect coin is respecting people's time and the fact that they actually have lives. This is something that I think is super, super common. And I think it's actually really challenging because the fact of the matter is the hospitality industry never sleeps. Well, maybe they do on Mondays between 10 and 2. Right. But I mean, it stinks sometimes. Being a bartender means you're going to be working Friday nights, Saturday nights, some holidays. But that doesn't mean that you as a bar manager get to steamroll people's lives. Yeah. And this is probably one of the biggest things that you hear seasoned staff complain about, and that is their schedules. I mean, there have been many places I've worked in that will release a schedule the day before they're due. So, for example, if your work week is Monday through Sunday, the managers will release a schedule Sunday night or even worse, Monday morning. So that happened to us when we were first dating, and I was still working outside of the industry. I was working a normal 9-to-5 job, and I remember we never did anything on weekends because we couldn't make plans. Yeah, I mean we would do stuff, but only, or I say weekends on your weekends. Right, my days off. Because we just never knew when they would be, and so we could never do anything that required more than a day or two's notice. Yeah, and it was really frustrating. It feels like you're holding your staff hostage on both sides of the coin. You know, as a manager, your job is to kind of really be the advocate of your staff and to lead by example and kind of really establish a cool culture. If you're holding your staff hostage by the schedule, it's kind of like the same thing as holding a table hostage by not dropping a check. It sucks, you know, and it's just going to cause a lot of animosity and a lot of problems. So respect their time and make sure that they have what they need to plan their lives around. Yeah, I mean, it would be great to send out schedules with 2 weeks notice, but maybe that's not realistic. I do think it is realistic to do a week or at least 4 or 5 days. Yeah, I think the standard is probably, you'll ideally want to release it on a Wednesday for the coming week. But I mean, 2 weeks out, we all know what our lives look like 2 weeks out. Yeah. It should really be something we can do as an industry. And I think that's actually a great differentiator. If you are the bar where folks get their schedules far in advance, that's a huge benefit that that people are going to think to themselves, well, if I leave, I'm not going to get that somewhere else.
Yeah. And this kind of goes right into another subject around respecting people's times and lives. And that is giving them the ability to schedule their vacations. It's going to be a lot easier if, you say no to somebody because it just doesn't make sense on a schedule, and open it up to them and say, look, the schedule's out 2 weeks early. Try to find somebody to cover your shifts. And then you can take it, or, whatever. If it's one day off here, one day off there, then they have the opportunity to do that.
Well, more importantly, I mean, I would be curious for your thoughts on this, Chris, but it seems to me there should just be a policy in place. How do you deal with vacations? I mean, I don't remember exactly how it was for you. It was so long ago, but it seems like it was just that you didn't get vacation. You had to have somebody cover all your shifts.
That's kind of, it really depends on the place you're at. I've been to work at places where if you're off, you get it in early enough, a couple of months out, and it's not a problem. But then you run into different issues of either people that are super top performers, they want certain days off, or people that have been there long want certain days off. So
of course, yeah, everybody wants New Year's Eve off,
right? And then that's the other thing is 4th of July, nobody wants to work because they want to all go out and have fun with their friends and get drunk.
Yeah.
But somebody still has to manage and operate the restaurant. So it's really up to you to figure out what your vacation policy is, but at least have one and communicate it so people know how they can go about scheduling time off.
Yeah. And I think by having a policy in place, you can kind of circumvent any concerns about favoritism.
Yeah.
If you have no policy whatsoever, then people might think, well, Jenny got the good shift and, Bob got the day off because they are the favorites or whatever reason. And I think if you have it documented, you can be a little bit, you can avoid a little bit of that.
Right. So another area could really help to retain staff is just give them a great place to work. Make sure it is a safe place for them to come, and they have no kind of concerns for their safety at all.
I really think safety is a huge, huge issue in this industry. And it's not to open this huge can of worms on this podcast. It's probably 5 episodes in and of itself. But your staff needs to trust that when it comes down to money or safety, you're going to choose safety. They need to trust that you're going to do what's right to keep them and your customers safe. Because if they don't truly believe that, that's pretty scary.
Yeah. And this is by all means a cash-based business. We walk out of the door with cash on us all the time. All of the tips that we accrue in a day, most likely you're going to be walking out that door with it in your pocket. So one of the things that I always like to do as a manager is, when I close the doors and we're done for business, if staff starts to leave, always offer to walk them out to their car because it makes sense.
Well, I think it's an easy gesture and it shows that you care.
Right. Absolutely. So little things like that can definitely add up. Make sure that there are plenty of lights outside. If you need security, hire somebody. And it could be like somebody as a dual role as, let's say, a busser and / security guy. I know there's a couple restaurants that I've worked with that have done that. And it's great because then you have security, eyes of security on the floor mingling in the crowd. I mean, that's kind of a best case scenario.
Well, I think also the bartenders know that there's somebody who's got their back.
Yeah, absolutely.
If things go south, they know that they've got somebody, within 20 feet of them who's gonna help them out in that situation.
Right. Absolutely. And this also applies to kind of that area that has become a little bit more of a hot button in the craft bar world right now, and that's sexual harassment. This kind of applies to that as well.
Really, really important. I think it's so important that everybody believes it's a safe place to work. And that means you do not tolerate sexual harassment. You don't brush it under the rug. You listen to concerns that you hear, and you don't let customers do it either. Yeah,
I know this is kind of the industry where, we flirt a lot.
You do?
Well, it is.
Wait a minute.
It is. It's a very flirtatious environment, but don't let it go too far. I've seen it go way too far on the customers. The customers feel entitled, So they go a little bit further than they should. You got to make sure that you treat and look out for your staff in scenarios like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this kind of thing may depend heavily on what kind of bar that you are running, on whether this is something that happens frequently. But I think it's important to sort of have the conversation with your staff, let them know that you have their backs, let them know what to do if a situation arises where they become uncomfortable, and just them knowing that you are listening is going to be a huge difference right there.
Absolutely. So another area that we could really focus on is being able to instill a sense of pride in your staff. This goes a long way, and it's kind of almost counterintuitive on what this means. And basically, it's raising the level of your staff through education, through challenging them, through advancing them through their careers, and not letting them just show up and do a mediocre job.
Yeah, once again, it's not just being nice. It's the opposite of that in some ways. I think that it's being demanding. I think it's silly things like demand cleanliness. Make people show up with an ironed shirt, or if that makes sense for your bar. Maybe there's a dress code that is what you require for your establishment. That kind of thing is really going to, it's going to be a little bit more effort that they have to put in before they come into work every day, but it's a sense of pride.
Yeah, and it doesn't even just have to do with how they present themselves. One of my pet peeves is watching staff walk by a piece of trash on the floor. It blows my mind, but just little things like that. Pick up after yourself. If you see something needs to be picked up, pick it up. If you go into the restroom and you need to use a restroom, you tidy it up while you're in there before you hit the floor. Obviously, wash your hands, but if the restroom's in a little bit of a disarray, take 2 seconds, clean it up a little bit, because once that starts to fall apart, then people are going to just destroy that bathroom after that.
Well, and I think that you don't want the sort of not in my section, it's not my problem, it's somebody else's job sort of mindset starting to take hold. You want the sense of, we all own this restaurant in some ways. We all are accountable to this bar. We all care about this bar being successful. So yeah, I'm going to go and pick up some trash that's not technically in my section, or, not technically my job.
Right. And once again, it's all about establishing a culture of excellence and teamwork. So, all this stuff starts to kind of get intertwined with each other. If somebody doesn't work out in this environment, that's probably for the best. It's not a good cultural fit for them, and you don't want them hanging out.
So similarly, I would say that another really, really good way to instill a sense of pride is investing in staff training. And this is both time and money. On the money side, you can invest in tastings. You can offer to pay for certifications like the sommelier certification, Cicerone, mixology training, for example. Another thing I've seen is some places will offer to pay for a USBG membership or attendance at conferences or seminars. These are really not expensive. I don't know exactly what each one of these certifications cost, but I know USBG membership is about $100, $110 a year, something like that. Conferences and seminars. Sure, it might be a tough request to get somebody to pay for you to fly out to New Orleans every July. But, there's a lot of regional conferences nowadays, and often tickets are, $30, $40.
Yeah. And, give them time off, and, just let them know, like, hey, you know what? I'd really like you to, I know you're really excited about this conference. Why don't you take a couple classes, and then tell them that they need to report back to the staff.
And that's important.
And share the knowledge. So that way you'll once again kind of instill this culture of, progress and showcase that there is a reward and a benefit for doing that.
And once again, you're demanding that people actually hold themselves to a higher standard. You're not just giving them a random day off and $50 in their pocket. You're saying, go to the seminar, learn something, and help us learn it too. Bring it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the same note of rewards and, investing in your staff, I remember reading a article of a restaurant owner in San Francisco that is actually truly investing in his staff and kind of giving them really great incentives. So what he'll do is establish a really a good goal for the restaurant as a team or even as an individual, And then once you achieve that particular goal, whether it be financial or Yelp scores or whatever it is, revenue for the week, or month or year, quarter, whatever it is, he will also say, okay, here are 10 different options for you. Which one do you want? And it'll be really fun options like what we mentioned up here, certifications, classes, all that stuff. Or it will be, I'll buy your Netflix account for a year, or your Amazon Prime account for a year, or $100 gift card for Amazon, or, and it's funny. One of my friends actually talked to him and told me that, of all these amazing rewards he offers, most people go for like the Netflix, or
I would totally go for Netflix.
I know, right? Guilt-free Netflix. Are you kidding me?
I know, it's great. That's funny.
I mean, and once again, this is money that you are spending from your bottom line, but think of how much money it's saving you in training, opportunity costs, about getting somebody up to speed.
And again, if you anchor it to a goal, it might just pay for itself. Especially if it's a financial goal or something that's connected to financials, like a Yelp score, I think that could absolutely be cash positive.
Oh, it absolutely pays for itself. Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt.
Reminds me of the dentist growing up. They would always give us a little drawer of treats to pick from if we did a good job brushing.
Oh, that's
just
terrible.
Like that.
Oh, that's terrible.
It wasn't like candy. It was like stickers.
It was a Jolly Rancher kid.
No,
good job brushing your teeth.
It was like,
see you again in a week.
Yeah, that's probably not a good incentive for a dentist. No, it was like stickers and things, and we got to choose whatever we wanted from the so you got me saying candy from the toy chest, and I think it's somewhat similar. Is just set goals. But also when you set that goal, make it clear what the reward is, because I think there's something disingenuous about an owner waltzing into a room and saying, okay, everyone, let's work really hard and make me lots of money. Yeah. I think you really want people to feel like there's something in it for them. Absolutely.
And here's another one that we could talk about. And this one's free and it is extremely powerful. And that is listen. Listen to your staff.
Oh my gosh, I could not agree more. This is the number one point of frustration I hear from bartenders. I probably get an email at least once or twice a week from people and they always say the same thing. Either I'm new to this bar or I've been working in this bar for 10 years and I believe I have the skill to do X, but nobody will give me the chance. Or I have made suggestions about how this bar can run better and nobody's listening. I see things that are happening that are bad and nobody cares. If you just listen to your staff, your staff are your eyes and your ears. And frankly, if they're telling you things, they care enough to tell you. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a very good thing. And, like I said, this doesn't cost you anything. And nothing is going to turn away somebody so fast as ignoring them or not listening to them. I mean, that's basically saying your opinions don't count.
And by the way, just listening to them and saying, oh yeah, we'll do that, and then not doing it, that's the same thing. You don't get points for that.
Right, exactly. But this one has to be kind of, it could go a lot of different ways. I remember as a manager, I would open up these conversations and sometimes you just get terrible ideas. Yeah. I mean, really, really bad ones. And
but I think that going back to the respect thing, I think that you need to own that and say, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate your thoughts. I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense for us to do the thing you suggested because X, Y, and Z. Now, I know there's a risk that you're going to spend 14 hours every staff meeting explaining every little thing, but I think just validate that people are talking to you and that they deserve a response. I think that's not a lot to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just having a sense of who you guys are and where you are headed as a business and making that very, very clear to your staff, that could be a really great way to explain your reasoning why you say yes or no. Like, hey, we want to be the number one craft cocktail bar in our region. And if somebody says, hey, you know what, we should do a really cool craft beer selection, and you say no, that's the lens you can kind of point them back and say, look, we're really focused on craft cocktails. I respect the idea that craft beer is making a huge resurgence, and it would be a great add to our offering, but our goal is to be a craft cocktail bar. that could be an example. And there's just a way of kind of answering why.
And showing respect. Yeah, right. Exactly. So we talked a little bit a moment ago about goals for the restaurant and, picking your toy out of the toy drawer. But I think even beyond that, on a person-to-person level, reward people for doing a good job. And I'm not just talking about stickers and funny shaped erasers. Well, I mean, you could try that. I don't know.
That could work.
I have never heard of that happening in a restaurant
Bottles of
setting.
booze, more likely.
Hey,
I think in this industry.
That might be a little bit of a bad incentive structure.
Well,
thou shalt not open till you leave the premises.
Right, exactly.
But I think something that's really, really underrated is just giving people public praise. What's that they say, like praise in public and criticize in private? Well, this is, I think so few managers and owners bother with the praising step. It's easy to forget when people are doing well because there's no fires to put out. Right.
I have a kind of a funny story. Over the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of consulting work. And at one particular restaurant I was working at, me and the owner were talking about incentivizing staff, and he didn't know what to do. He was just kind of all over the place. And we were in a staff meeting at this point, and we were off to the side. So I said, have you actually asked your staff what they want? And he said, no. So that's basically what I did. I'm like, hey guys, here's the deal. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're looking at. What do you guys want? And the first person that raised their hand, all they said was, I want to be recognized in front of my peers. It has so much weight. And it's free.
It could not be more free.
Right. And if you see something that you want more people to do, call it out in public.
Yeah.
People are going to get it after a while. Like,
make a note and point it out at the next staff meeting. If you're 10 deep at the bar, you probably don't want to throw on the fluorescent lights and
right. Do a little dance and
little flashing sirens go off. Right. No, I mean, make a note and call it out at the next staff meeting. It's a perfect opportunity to do that. And not only is the person who did the thing right going to feel awesome, but everybody else is going to take notice that A, you're paying attention, and B, you care, and C, if they do things right, they're going to get public praise. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, all these things are, as we mentioned, creating a really cool culture. And another thing that you can do is to really get to know your staff on a personal level. Know them, about their families, where they're at. Invest the time to really understand who they are as people. One of the best ways you can do this is really figure out what their career goals are.
Now, there's a really difficult way to find this out. It's very, very complicated. It takes a lot of work. What you do is you ask them.
Right. And this could be...
And then you listen to what they say.
And this, I don't know if we mentioned that as far as, how to attract good staff, but you ask this question in the interview. You get to know who they are. You get to know where they want to go. This is something I continue to tell the clients I'm working with now, that is, find out what they want to do, because if it's aligned with what you want to do, that might be a really good investment for you.
And that's a sweet spot right there.
Oh my God. If you can find something, like, for example, if you want to expand your business in private events, what you could do is find somebody that's really excited about getting into the private event business and start to groom them to do that, and take that over and kind of take charge of that. I mean, you're absolutely going to reap, both of you are going to reap the benefits of that.
Absolutely. You get your private events program and they get fantastic career experience. And oh, by the way, they know that you care about their career.
Yeah, this is something that I have a lot of passion about. I think that this is something that we as an industry completely underutilize. I think this could be a really fantastic way to set yourself apart from the competition by providing these kind of opportunities for your staff.
I think so often, I mean, I'm making a generalization here, but so often I think that managers and owners, they may make assumptions about the career aspirations of their staff and lack thereof, quite frankly. But I don't know. I hear constantly about new bartenders, experienced bartenders, folks all in all positions in bars and restaurants. And what I'm hearing is that they really care, and that they really care about the hospitality industry, and that they want to do a great job. And if you have that conversation with them and find out that your busser wants to be a craft bartender, well, they're probably not going to do it tomorrow. But if you talk to them and say, well, here's the path and here's how we can work towards that, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's investing in your staff on an emotional, on a financial level. It reaps so many rewards. And if you treat your staff good, they're probably going to prosper in this environment and stay and do really cool stuff in the craft bar world. And your network and your credibility and people's viewpoints of working for you and with you, it's gold. And you can't buy that. You will never have, you're never going to have to put a one ad out.
It's true. Word gets around when it's a great place to work. So overall, I think we've covered a lot of different areas, but it really just comes back to one thing, and that just is respect and really setting the tone.
Yeah. And you as a bar manager, the bar owner, really are kind of the captain of the ship. You have to lead by example. You can't be asking your staff to do something that you're not doing yourself. Because that's one way to lose all credibility.
Yeah, you can try, but it ain't going to work.
Right, exactly. So yeah, here's a couple ideas around the subject of keeping staff and staff retention.
Yeah, I would love to hear if anybody out there has any great tricks or tips that they have found are really effective at their own bar. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we care a lot about bar culture, about the hospitality culture, and I would love to learn from you. So definitely leave us some tips in the comments over at mixologytalk.com/90. So as we go into the new year, I hope you'll consider some of these ideas for keeping your best staff around as long as possible. As I mentioned, you can find today's show notes over at mixologytalk.com/90. And if you're interested in our thoughts on hiring great people, definitely check out episode 85 as well. Happy New Year, everyone, and cheers. Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.